The muzzle didn't tremble. It pressed into his ribs like a cold coin, right where the suit jacket met skin, and the man holding it expected Lucien Caruso to beg. That's what everyone wanted from him in the end. Noise, panic, permission to believe he was human. Lucien didn't give it. The gun barked once. Pain flashed hot, then flattened into a hard, workable pressure. He drove his shoulder into the alley door, stole 3 steps, and vanished into rain that looked like static under the streetlights. By the time he shoved into Rosie's diner at 3:02 a.m., his phone was dead, his shirt was ruined, and blood was spreading in dark petals beneath the cotton like a secret trying to announce itself. The bell over the door chirped, bright, cartoonish, against a room that instantly went quiet. 3 customers at the counter saw him and remembered they were late to nowhere. Coffee cups clinked down, a stool scraped, a jacket zipped. The cook slipped through the back like he'd been edited out of the scene. Even the manager found an emergency in the storage closet. No one asked if he needed help. They all knew the face, the jaw that never softened, the eyes that looked like they'd already decided what you were worth, the name that made men swallow their pride and women lock their doors. Lucien kept moving anyway, because falling down was a luxury he didn't allow himself. He slid into a booth near the window, back to the wall, sightline to the door, then braced his palm on the table as if he was just resting. The vinyl seat squealed under his weight. His breath came shallow, measured. He'd lived through worse than a graze and cracked bone. He'd also never lived through it alone. Rain rattled the glass. Neon from the motel sign across the street bled pink and cyan into the diner, throwing a cheap CRT glow over everything. Halation around chrome, a soft smear on the edges of faces. The whole room looked like an old tape trying to hold together. Lucien lifted his eyes and saw her. She stepped out from behind the counter with a coffee pot in one hand and a rag in the other. Curvy, not delicate. Dark hair pinned up in a messy twist that kept slipping free. Pink uniform faded at the seams. Name tags scratched to almost nothing. Mara. Her eyes widened when she saw the blood. They did not dart away. Jesus, she breathed, setting the pot down with a care that didn't match the moment. You're hurt. I'm fine. His voice came out dry, too hard. Phone. You're bleeding. She didn't ask it like a question. She said it like a fact she intended to fix. Lucien watched the rest of the diner pretend she hadn't spoken. Their fear wasn't loud. It was practiced. They stared at menus they weren't reading, counted sugar packets, wiped already clean surfaces. Every movement was a way to not become a witness. Mara moved anyway. She reached under the counter, yanked out a first aid kit, and crossed the floor like she'd done this before. Not for him, for life, for people who came in bruised and broke and too proud to admit it. Don't, he warned, but the word hit air and fell dead. She dropped to her knees between his legs without hesitation, her hands already tugging at the fabric of his shirt. A clean towel appeared from her apron pocket. She pressed it against his side and leaned in with her body weight, practical and steady. Pain sharpened. Lucien's jaw tightened. He didn't flinch. Bullet? She asked. Graze. Lucky. I don't do luck. She glanced up at him, eyes like warm honey under fluorescent light. You're doing it right now. Something inside his chest shifted. Not the rib, not the wound. Something older and less obedient. You know who I am, he said. Mara's hands didn't pause. Yeah, and you're still touching me. Yeah. Outside, a car rolled slow past the window. Lucien's gaze tracked it without moving his head. The sedan didn't stop. It kept going. Whoever had pulled the trigger wanted him finished, but they also wanted him chased, wanted him to run into a second trap. He'd chosen the only place no one would dare touch him, a public diner. Witnesses everywhere, cowards everywhere, except the woman kneeling in front of him. Why? He asked, voice low. Mara peeled back the cloth enough to see the wound, then swabbed it with antiseptic. The sting hit like electricity. She taped fresh gauze with quick, competent fingers. Because you're bleeding on my booth, she said, and I'm not built to watch that happen. That's not smart. I'm not trying to impress you. Lucien stared at the top of her head, the loose strand of hair escaping her twist, the slight tremor in her fingers she refused to let become a mistake. You should be afraid, he said. She didn't look up this time. I'm aware of what you are. Then leave. Not until it stops. Her voice wasn't brave. It wasn't performative. It was simply decided. Lucien had heard that tone before, but only from men who thought they were untouchable. It sounded different on her. When she leaned closer to tape the last edge, her shoulder brushed his knee. Her breath hit his skin for half a second. warm, vanilla and coffee and dish soap, and his body registered it like a warning flare. His hand moved before he could stop it. He caught her wrist gently, just to steady her when she reached for more gauze. She froze. Lucian let go immediately. "Sorry." Mara's eyes flicked to his hand, then back to his face. "You're shaking." "I'm not. You are." He hadn't noticed. His palms were steady in boardrooms. They didn't shake when he signed orders that ended men. They didn't shake when he stared down prosecutors and politicians. They shook now because a stranger had decided he was worth saving in public. "Finish it," he muttered, as if he could order the moment away. Mara finished it. She sat back on her heels and wiped her hands on the towel, looking at the bandage like she'd built it herself. "Okay, you'll live." Lucian exhaled once, controlled. "Phone." Mara pointed behind the counter. "Landline." He started to rise, and his vision narrowed at the edges. His ribs protested. The booth edge dug into his side. Mara stood fast and stepped in, bracing his arm without asking. He could have snapped at her. He didn't. He let her. The bell over the door rang again, but this time it wasn't innocent. Boots. Urgency. The kind of movement that brought guns into light. "Boss!" Gio Santoro burst in with 5 men behind him, coats dark with rain. Their eyes swept the diner, scanning corners, hands already near waistbands. Gio stopped dead when he saw Lucian. Shirt open, bandage fresh, a waitress with blood on her hands. The room tightened like a cable. Gio's stare cut to Mara, then to the manager, then back to Lucian. A question rose in his throat and died there. He knew better than to ask what his boss allowed. Lucian straightened slowly. "Pay for the damages," he said, voice flat, "and leave a tip that makes this place forget tonight." "Yes, boss." "And security." Lucian's gaze stayed on Mara. 2 men outside. Every night. Mara's chin lifted. "I didn't ask for that." "You didn't ask to be seen either," Lucian said softly. "You were." The words landed heavier than he intended, because it wasn't just about danger. It was about how quickly the world noticed the moment a man like him let someone close. Gio handed the manager a thick envelope. The manager's hands shook so badly he almost dropped it. Lucian shrugged into his jacket, hiding the blood, hiding the weakness. He moved toward the door, men peeling around him like a moving wall. Mara followed 2 steps, then stopped at the edge of the booth, like there was an invisible line she refused to cross. "Hospital," she said quietly. Lucian's mouth curved barely. "Not my style." "Then at least don't bleed out in someone's alley." He paused at the door, the neon outside painting his cheekbones in harsh color. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a plain black card. No name, just a number stamped into it. "If anything feels wrong," he said, holding it out, "call." Mara stared at it like it was a live wire. "And if I don't?" "I'll call first," he said, because it was true, because he already knew he would. She took the card slowly, thumb sliding across the embossed digits. The room watched. Lucian didn't care. "Thank you," he said, meaning it in a way he hadn't meant anything in years. Mara's lips parted slightly, as if she'd expected him to laugh instead. Then Gio opened the door, and cold rain air rushed in. Lucian stepped out. The bell chimed behind him, and for the first time in a decade, the most feared man in New York walked away thinking about someone who didn't fear him at all. Subscribe now if you want the rest, because he doesn't just come back. He changes the rules of the city to make sure she survives what she accidentally started. Morning tried to bleach the diner out of her memory. Mara told herself it was exhaustion. Too many double shifts. Too many nights staring into neon and coffee steam until everything looked like VHS snow. Dangerous men didn't stumble into Queen's diners and let strangers press towels into their ribs. Men like Lucian Caruso didn't sit in a booth like a wounded animal and allow anyone, to see the seam in their armor. But the envelope Gio left behind didn't evaporate with sunrise. Rosie, owner, cook, therapist, dictator, counted the bills once, then twice, then looked at Mara like she'd discovered a new species. "You know who that was." Mara poured coffee for the breakfast rush with hands that wouldn't stop buzzing. "I know. That's not a normal I know. That's an I know, and I touched him. I bandaged him." Rosie's mouth twitched. "In front of God and everybody." Mara tried to laugh. It came out thin. At 10:11 a.m., 2 men in black jackets appeared outside the diner. They didn't come in. They didn't order. They stood like punctuation marks at the edge of the sidewalk, scanning cars, scanning faces, scanning shadows. The regulars noticed. The neighborhood noticed. Even the pigeons seemed to give them a wider berth. Rosie leaned over the counter, voice low. That's his handwriting all over it. Mara stared out the window. One of the men glanced up, met her eyes, and nodded once. Polite, not friendly, like a promise with teeth. He can't do that, Mara muttered. Rosie wiped a plate that was already clean. He can. The question is whether he stops. At noon, a delivery guy walked in carrying a slim box wrapped in black paper. He asked for Mara by name, then set it on the counter like he didn't want to hold it any longer than necessary. Inside was a new uniform, not diner cotton. Something soft, expensive, tailored to her shape in a way that made her feel exposed, even though it covered her. A note lay on top, folded once. No flourish. You shouldn't have to work in something that's falling apart. Elmara stared at the stitching, at the clean edges, at how perfectly it fit the body he'd barely touched, the life he'd barely entered. He'd noticed the worn seams on her old uniform in the middle of blood and danger. Her throat tightened. Rosie read the note over her shoulder and made a sound like sympathy disguised as amusement. Oh, honey. I'm not... Mara snapped the lid shut. I'm not doing this. Rosie's eyebrows lifted. Doing what? Whatever this is. Rosie poured herself a coffee she didn't need. Men like him don't send uniforms because they're charitable. Mara shoved the box under the counter, but the paper kept catching light, like it wanted to be seen. He thinks he can buy... access. Rosie's expression flattened. Don't insult yourself. He doesn't have to buy anything. He's Lucian Caruso. People offer themselves for free. That made Mara feel worse, not better. She finished her shift, refused to look at the window, and tried to pretend the street outside didn't feel different. It did. The air was thicker, like the city had shifted 1 inch to make room for a new rumor. When she stepped into the night at 12:04 a.m., she saw the black town car immediately, parked across from the diner, hazard lights off, engine quiet. The street lamp above it flickered, casting a stuttered CRT halo over the windshield. A man leaned against the driver's side door. Lucian wasn't wearing a suit this time. Dark jeans, black shirt open at the throat, no tie, no armor except the way he carried himself. Lazy confidence with an edge that said he could become violence in a blink. Mara stopped walking. Her first instinct was to turn around. Her second was to keep going, because running felt like a surrender she hadn't agreed to. Lucian pushed off the car as she approached. You wore the old one. Mara's eyes narrowed. I didn't ask you to send anything. You didn't ask me to bleed in your booth either. I fixed that, she said. We're even. Lucian's gaze dropped to her name tag, then back up. Not even close. Mara held the black card in her fist, the one he'd given her. She hadn't called. She hadn't thrown it away. She hated that she'd kept it. I don't accept gifts from strangers, she said. His mouth tilted. We're not strangers. We are. Lucian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell him. Dark cologne and rain and something sharp underneath, like clean metal. Not after you put your hands on my skin and chose not to look away, he said quietly. Mara's heart beat harder. She hated that her body responded like this, like danger was a magnet. You shouldn't be here, she said. I haven't stopped thinking about you. He said it like it was a statement of fact, not a line. Mara swallowed. That's your problem. Lucian's eyes softened for half a second, then hardened again. It became yours the moment you made a choice in public. Mara tried to keep her voice steady. What choice? You saved me, he said, in a room full of people who pretended I didn't exist. Mara lifted her chin. I didn't do it for you. I did it because you were bleeding. Lucian nodded once, as if that was the only answer that mattered. That's the part that keeps looping. A car passed. One of the black-jacketed guards shifted position. The city kept moving, but the sidewalk around them felt like a set with the sound cut out. Why are you here? Mara asked. Lucian's gaze held hers. Dinner. Mara let out a short laugh that had no humor in it. No. One meal, he said. Not a performance. Not a parade. Somewhere normal. You choose the place. She should have said no again, but her mouth didn't obey immediately, because the last time she saw his eyes, they looked like the kind of loneliness that learned to make itself useful. You don't know anything about me, she said instead. Lucian's expression didn't change. You take your break at 9:20 even when you don't eat. You keep a notebook behind the register that you write in when the diner is empty. You carry pepper spray that's expired because you bought it 2 years ago and forgot. Mara's blood went cold. How do you... It's what I do, he said, not proud, just honest. Mara's fingers tightened around the card. That's not romantic. Lucian's eyes flicked over her face like he was learning it again. It's protection. There's a difference, Mara shot back. Lucian's jaw worked. He looked like he wanted to argue, then decided not to. Fine, he said. Let me do it the correct way. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple folded paper. No logo, no flourish. On it was an address, a small Italian place in Brooklyn, a time, tomorrow, 7 p.m. If you don't come, he said, I'll leave you alone. Mara scoffed. You don't sound like a man who leaves things alone. His mouth moved like he wanted to smile. It didn't quite make it. I can when I decide to. Mara stared at the paper, then at him. And the men outside? They stay, he said. Whether you like it or not, that's not a negotiation. Mara's pulse jumped. Anger flared. You don't own me. Lucian stepped closer again, and the streetlight caught the cut along his ribs where the bandage peeked beneath his shirt. Proof he could bleed. Proof he could be reached. I'm not trying to own you, he said, voice low. I'm trying to keep you from becoming a message. Mara's throat tightened. A message to who? Lucian's gaze slid briefly down the street, then back to her. To anyone who thinks touching what matters to me is a way to get my attention. Mara almost said, I don't matter to you. But she remembered his hands shaking, remembered the way his voice softened when he said thank you. She hated that she remembered. One meal, she said, and it came out like a dare, but somewhere normal. Lucian's shoulders eased a fraction, like a man loosening a tie he'd been choking in. Done. She started to walk past him. Lucian's voice stopped her. Mara. She turned. His eyes held hers with a steadiness that felt like a promise and a warning braided together. If anything feels wrong, I know, she cut in, lifting the card. Call. Lucian's jaw tightened. No, you call. Mara didn't answer. She walked away with the address in her pocket and a city's worth of attention beginning to tilt toward her. That night, alone in her apartment, she did what every modern woman does when she makes a questionable decision at midnight. She searched his name. Lucian Caruso filled her screen in a flood of headlines and blurry photos. Charity galas where he stood in the background like a shadow with perfect posture. Court rumors. Suspected ties. Ongoing investigations. A politician caught leaving his building at 2 a.m. A business rival vanishing after a lawsuit. Nothing was proven. Everything was implied. Her hands went cold on the phone. Then her screen lit with an incoming call from an unknown number. She answered before she could talk herself out of it. Hello? You're searching me, Lucian's voice said, calm, faintly amused. I can feel it. Mara's stomach dropped. That's insane. It's accurate. A pause. Then his tone changed, less sharp. You found the ugly parts. Mara swallowed. I found a lot. Are you scared? She wanted to lie. She didn't. I don't know. Lucian exhaled softly. That's honest. Mara stared at the ceiling, the neon from the street washing her room in shifting color. Why me? She asked, and hated how small it sounded. Lucian didn't answer with a line. He answered with something raw. Because you didn't treat me like a story, he said. You treated me like a bleeding man. Mara's throat tightened. That's not safe. I won't hurt you, he said. Not loud, not dramatic, controlled, like a vow written in steel. Even if I break every other rule I've ever lived by. She almost laughed, almost cried. Instead, she said, One dinner, he agreed. When she hung up, Mara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Somewhere across the city, Lucian Caruso sat in an office lit by cold monitors and softer shadows, watching a security feed of a diner booth and a woman in a faded pink uniform. He didn't rewind the footage because he needed to study it. He rewound it because he couldn't stop. And the moment he realized that, he knew the city was about to pay for it. The restaurant smelled like garlic and old brick, like somebody's grandmother had been cooking there long before the city learned how to gentrify pain. Mara arrived 5 minutes early and stood outside for a full minute anyway, letting rain beat on her coat while her brain ran through every possible version of what she was doing. A man like Lucian Caruso didn't do normal. He did leverage. He did optics. He did control. And yet, when he pulled up at exactly 7 p.m., he wasn't in the armored parade she'd imagined. Just the Blacktown car. One driver, one guard at a distance that looked like coincidence. Lucian stepped out, eyes catching her the way a camera finds its subject. Dark coat, clean lines, no jewelry loud enough to announce anything. He looked like he'd dressed to disappear, and somehow that made him more dangerous. You came, he said. Mara forced her shoulders to stay loose. One dinner. Lucian held the door for her without comment, as if he'd been taught manners by someone who still believed in them. Inside, the lights were warm and low. Red checkered tablecloths, a bar with scuffed wood, couples talking in murmurs. No one screamed. No one ran. If anyone recognized him, they kept it buried behind their wine. "This place," Lucian said as they slid into a corner booth. "My grandmother brought me here when I was a kid." Mara studied him across the table. "You had a grandmother?" His mouth moved like that was almost funny. "I had a whole childhood. It just ended early." She waited. He didn't volunteer details. He didn't perform trauma. He simply sat there, hands folded, eyes on her like she was the only honest thing in the room. "What do you write?" he asked. Mara blinked. "Excuse me?" "The notebook behind the register," he said. "The ink smudge on your right hand, the callus on your middle finger." Mara's cheeks warmed. "It's nothing." Lucian's gaze didn't waver. "Nothing you return to night after night." Mara looked down at her hands. She hated that he'd noticed. She hated that she wanted someone to notice. "I write stories," she admitted. "When I can." Lucian nodded once. "Tell me." So she did. Not the whole plot, not the embarrassing parts, just the shape of it. A woman trying to outrun a life that kept pulling her back. A man built out of bad decisions. A city that punished softness. Lucian listened like every sentence mattered. Not because he was polite, because he was locked in. Like he needed her words to calibrate something inside him that had been broken too long. When the food arrived, the owner didn't hover, didn't ask for photos, didn't make it weird. He just set the plates down and walked away, as if he understood the kind of silence Lucian could buy without paying for it. "Why me?" Mara asked again later, quieter now, because the question wouldn't die. Lucian didn't dodge it. "Because you didn't want anything," he said. "You didn't bargain. You didn't ask for favors. You didn't flatter me. You just acted." Mara's throat tightened. She looked at her glass, watched the candlelight smear into a soft glow along the rim, like an old lens catching flare. "Acting doesn't make me special." "It does in my world," Lucian said. "In my world, people pause to calculate. You didn't." Mara stared at him. "That's not a compliment. That's a warning." Lucian's eyes darkened. "Maybe it's both." They talked until the restaurant emptied around them. Lucian's phone buzzed twice. He glanced at it, his expression sharpening into something colder, then flipped it face down without answering. Mara saw that choice, felt it land. "You don't have to," she began. "Yes," Lucian said simply. "I do." Outside, the city looked sharper. Wind pushed rain across the streetlights so it glittered like interference. At her building, Lucian walked her to the door, stopping under the awning as if crossing the threshold was a line he wouldn't touch without permission. "Good night," Mara said, and tried to sound normal. Lucian's gaze dropped to her mouth for half a second, then back to her eyes. "If I kiss you," he said, voice low, "I won't want to stop." Mara's pulse jumped. "Then don't." Lucian leaned in anyway, slow, testing, giving her every chance to step away. She didn't. The kiss wasn't wild. It wasn't a conquest. It was controlled heat, careful pressure, like he was terrified of breaking something he didn't deserve. When it ended, Mara's breath came faster. Lucian's thumb brushed her jaw once, almost reverent. "I'll see you again," he said. Mara forced a scoff. "No, you won't." Lucian's eyes held hers, calm and absolute. "Yes," he said, "I will." He left her at the door with her skin humming and her brain screaming. The next 2 weeks weren't a romance montage. They were a slow takeover. Flowers arrived at the diner every day. Never obscene, never performative, always chosen like someone was paying attention. Lilies one day because she'd mentioned her mother loved them. Sunflowers another because she'd laughed at a kid's drawing taped to the wall. Lucian showed up after her shifts with no agenda except driving her home. Sometimes he brought coffee. Sometimes he brought silence. Sometimes he brought a story about his nephew Nico. 9 years old, shy, stubborn, too smart. Like he needed Mara to know there was still a child in his orbit who hadn't been poisoned yet. He never asked her to quit the diner. He did put more men outside. Mara argued. Lucian didn't bend. The first time she saw bruises on his knuckles, she didn't ask what he hit. She asked if it hurt. Lucian stared at her for a long beat like no one had ever asked him that without ulterior motive. Then he said, "Not as much as I thought it would." It wasn't the bruises that started cracking her. It was the way he listened, the way he remembered, the way he didn't laugh when she talked about wanting to publish something with her name on it. One night, on his balcony, Manhattan below, the skyline shimmering like a broken circuit board. Lucian said it like a decision already made. Move in. Mara's mouth fell open. No, it's safer, he said. Here, I'm not a project, she snapped. Lucian's jaw tightened. You're a target, he corrected, and for the first time, his control slipped enough for her to see the fear underneath. Mara's voice went softer. Lucian. His phone buzzed. He looked at it once, and the temperature dropped out of him like someone flipped a switch. Gio will drive you home, he said. I need to handle something. Now? Mara's chest tightened. We're in the middle of... Mara, Lucian cut in, the command in his voice returning like muscle memory. Not now. He kissed her forehead, too quick, too controlled, and disappeared into the elevator. That was the night Mara realized what loving him meant, always sharing him with something she couldn't see, always watching him leave with his eyes already somewhere else. She didn't answer his calls the next day, or the day after. She stayed at her apartment. She wrote. She forced herself to breathe without his shadow covering her. On the third day, Lucian walked into Rosie's diner at lunchtime like he owned the air. The room froze. Rosie's hands stopped mid-plate. Mara felt the whole place tilt. Lucian's coat was dark. His expression was not. He didn't shout. He didn't cause a scene. He just stepped behind the counter, close enough that only she could hear him. Why are you avoiding me? He asked. I'm not, Mara lied, because lying was easier than admitting. Her throat tightened every time she saw his name light her phone. Lucian's hand closed gently around her wrist. Not painful, not threatening, just insistent. Don't, he said quietly. Not to me. Mara yanked her hand back. You want the truth? Fine. I'm scared. Lucian's eyes sharpened, but he didn't interrupt. I'm scared of your world, Mara continued, voice shaking despite her effort. I'm scared that I'm getting used to you. I'm scared I'll look up one day and realize I built my life around someone who can vanish because a meeting went wrong. The diner stayed silent, everyone listening, everyone pretending not to. Lucian's voice dropped lower. Say it again. Mara blinked. What? The part where you're getting used to me. Mara's cheeks burned. That's not... It's everything, Lucian said, and the rawness in his tone stole the oxygen. Because I'm already in too deep. Mara stared. Don't. Lucian leaned in, eyes locked on hers. I don't do shallow, he said. I don't do halfway, and I don't do losing what I've decided matters. Mara's throat tightened. You can't decide that for me. Lucian nodded once. Then decide. Mara couldn't. Not with the whole diner watching. Not with his hand hovering near her like he was resisting the urge to touch. So she whispered, Okay, I'll try. Lucian exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. He didn't kiss her there. He didn't claim her in public. He just stepped back and said, Good. That should have been the end of the drama. It wasn't. 2 days later, a man slid into booth 6 in Mara's section. He wore an expensive suit and a calm smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a diner. Marina Hale, he said, reading her name tag like he didn't care it was wrong. Or do you prefer Mara? Mara's stomach tightened. Can I get you something? I already have what I want, he said, voice smooth. A look at you. Mara didn't move. Who are you? The man leaned back. Dante Rojas. The name hit like a dropped glass. Mara had heard it in whispers since Lucian entered her world. Another crew, another king, another set of rules. I don't know you, Mara said carefully. Dante's smile sharpened. No, but Lucian knows me. He has something of mine, and I like to meet the things men cling to. Mara's fingers tightened on her order pad. Take it up with him. I will, Dante said, but I wanted you to understand something first. He leaned forward, voice lowering. When men like us get sentimental, the city punishes them. It's not personal, it's tradition. Mara forced her chin up. Is that a threat? Dante's eyes flicked over her face like he was selecting a knife. It's information. He stood, slid a $100 bill under his empty cup, and walked out like he hadn't just changed her blood temperature. Mara called Lucian immediately. He arrived in 12 minutes, and the look on his face told her he'd already decided what he was going to do to Dante Rojas. He came here, Lucian said, voice low, pacing the back room like a caged animal. He approached you in public. Mara's voice shook. He said you have something. Lucian's eyes cut to hers. It doesn't matter. It matters to me if it's why I'm... Mara stopped herself from saying target, because saying it made it real. Lucian's hands lifted, framing her face gently. Listen, you're not coming back to work until this is handled. You can't. I can, Lucian said, and the command slipped out before he could soften it. Then his eyes changed, a fraction of regret flashing. "Mara, please, I won't gamble with you." Mara saw the fear, not for himself, for her. She nodded once. "Okay, but you tell me what's happening." Lucian didn't answer directly. He kissed her forehead and said, "Soon." They moved her to a safe house outside the city. It wasn't a cage, not in the way the movies would frame it. It was clean, quiet, too quiet. Like the world had been muted. Guards at every door, polite but unmovable. Mara tried to write and found her hands too restless. Lucian called every few hours, his voice always controlled, but thinner each time, stretched tight over a problem he wouldn't name. On the fourth night, the power snapped off. The house went black. Silence for half a second, then footsteps on the stairs. Voices, too many. A guard burst into Mara's room, eyes wide. "We need to move. Now." The door exploded inward before he could finish. Men rushed in. Dante Rojas stepped through the broken frame like he owned the darkness. "Hi, Mara," he said pleasantly. "Tell your boyfriend I'm done being ignored." They grabbed her before she could run. Something pricked her neck. The world folded. Mara woke to a warehouse that smelled like cold metal and old oil. Her wrists were zip-tied to a chair, her ankles too. A strip of duct tape lay on a table nearby like a suggestion. Dante sat across from her, calm as a man in a cafe. "Relax," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." Mara forced her voice steady. "You kidnapped me." Dante's smile didn't move. "I borrowed you." He checked his watch. "Lucian has 2 hours to bring me what he owes." Mara swallowed hard. "He'll come." "Oh, I know," Dante said softly. "That's why you're here." Time moved wrong in the warehouse. Every sound was too loud. Every shadow looked like it could shift into a person. Then the doors blew open, not with a gentle entry, with force, with chaos. Lucian Caruso walked in with 20 men behind him, rain dripping from his coat, eyes black and focused. The CRT blue security lights above turned his face into something carved. "Let her go," Lucian said, voice low. Dante stood and lifted a gun, pressing it to Mara's head like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "The money first." Lucian didn't blink. "You touched what belongs to me." Dante's mouth tilted. "That's the sentiment I came to see." Lucian's men spread, steady, trained. Dante's men shifted too, nervous energy pinging off steel and concrete. Mara's pulse hammered. She remembered Lucian teaching her small things in the apartment. How to drop your weight, how to ruin someone's leverage, how to use the moment people assume you'll freeze. Dante's grip tightened on her shoulder. Mara made a decision. She dropped her weight like her bones turned to sand. The gun fired, but the recoil jerked Dante's wrist up. The shot cracked into the rafters instead of her skull. In the same breath, Lucian's men moved. The sound of gunfire filled the warehouse. Sharp, violent, then gone as quickly as it started. When Mara lifted her head, Dante Rojas was on the floor. Still. No gore, no theatrics. Just a body that had made one decision too many. Lucian was at her side instantly, cutting the zip ties with a knife that appeared like magic. His hands ran over her shoulders, her arms, her hair. Checking, checking, checking. "Are you hurt?" His voice broke on the words he didn't want to say. "Did he—" "I'm okay," Mara rasped. Lucian pulled her into his arms so hard she couldn't breathe. His body shook once, just once, and then he forced it still. "I thought I lost you," he said into her hair. Mara closed her eyes. The warehouse lights hummed. The air smelled like smoke and rain. She pressed her face into his chest and felt the bandage beneath his shirt. Proof he could bleed. Proof he could fear. A week later, after the city had swallowed the incident the way it swallowed everything, Lucian took her back to where it started. Rosie's Diner. 3 a.m. The same booth. The same neon bleeding into the window like color spill. Rosie pretended not to watch, but she watched. Lucian slid into the booth and lifted the edge of the table, fingers finding something carved into the underside. He turned it so Mara could see. LC plus M302. Mara's breath caught. "You did that?" Lucian nodded once. "After I left that night. Before I knew your last name. Before I knew anything except that you didn't let me die." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. No velvet theatrics, just clean black leather. Lucian slid out of the booth and knelt on the diner floor where her knees had been. "Mara Ellis," he said, voice steady. "I can't offer you a safe world. I can offer you a world where no one touches you without paying for it." Mara's eyes stung. Lucian opened the box. A ring caught the neon, throwing a small, bright flare. "Marry me," he said. "Not because you need protection. Because you're the only thing that made me want to earn peace." The diner stayed silent. Even the coffee machine seemed to hold its breath. Mara looked at him. The man the city feared. The man who bled in her booth. The man who showed up when she disappeared. The man who tore open a warehouse to bring her back. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, because sometimes the world needed clarity. "Yes." Lucian slid the ring onto her finger with hands that were finally steady. He stood and kissed her, quick, controlled, like he was trying not to make it a spectacle. It still became one. 3 months later, they married with Nico as ring-bearer and Gio's men blending into the walls like shadows with earpieces. Mara wore a simple dress. Lucian didn't cry loudly. He just pressed his forehead to hers after the vows, eyes closed, like he'd been carrying a weight too long and finally set it down. A year later, Mara held a newborn with dark eyes and a fierce, quiet grip. Lucian hovered close, palm on Mara's shoulder, looking at them like he'd been handed something he hadn't earned. "What do we name her?" Mara asked. Lucian stared at the baby, then at Mara. His voice went soft, "Something that means light." Mara smiled through exhaustion. "Elena," she said. "It means torch." Lucian nodded. "Perfect." Years later, Mara published her first novel. She changed names, changed streets, changed details. But in the dedication, she wrote one line: "For the man who taught me that kneeling to save someone isn't surrender, it's a choice." And in their home, above the fireplace, there was a framed photo of Booth 6 at Rosie's Diner. Neon glow, rain-streaked glass. The booth where a city's most feared man bled quietly while a waitress decided he wasn't allowed to die.